everyone, welcome to the Movieception Show. My name is Fariba, and tonight it's a very marvelous night. Tonight we actually had the Marvels release in theaters, and I actually just came back from watching the movie, so I'm planning on doing a review for that, not tonight, but hopefully sometime tomorrow, if not at the latest this weekend. But of course, we also have the Loki season 2 finale, which happened to kind of overlap all on one night. So I already finished watching the Marvels. I'll talk about that a different night, but let's focus on Loki season 2 finale, because this is the one that has been going on for a while now. We've been through this 6 weeks journey with Loki and saw what was basically the consequences of the season 1 finale, basically what would happen if Sylvie had killed He Who Remains, and we've now seen what has happened. And so far, right, I think each episode we've been seeing kind of some major developments. We've been seeing some great storytelling. We've been seeing some amazing performances from the cast, especially from Tom Hiddleston. I think last week was really an emotionally packed episode where we got to see Loki in his most vulnerable side. And so I think that so far the show has definitely been, it's definitely left a mark in why it has been one of the more consistent as well as one of the more top-notch shows coming from the Disney Plus, Marvel TV show era. And I mean, again, this is the only show so far that has actually managed to get a season 2, right? Aside from What If, but I don't know if you want to really count What If. So Loki season 2 now. Of course, the way that we ended off from last week, we basically had another sort of cliffhanger in a sense, although not in the most impactful way that we got from the episode before that. But we've had, at least as at this point, we've seen what's been going on with Loki. He has been glitching. We've noticed that he has the ability to travel between time within the TVA. So he's been in the past, he's been in the future, and he's seen how, despite this glitch that was teased back in the first 2 episodes, that is actually kind of the answer to their problems as we got more and more closer to the conclusion of season 2. And this is what we learned last week, of course, as a result of the fact that temporal loop was so unstable that it basically kind of exploded. And it's just so radioactive that it's now basically engulfing all these timelines. We saw literally last week, kind of a TVA version of the Infinity War, right? And we're all kind of reliving that moment in time. So now, of course, at least with this one, they've quickly, or not all of them, but with Loki in his case, he was able to really figure out the resolution to it. He knew that his glitching that, he experienced earlier is actually the problem solver for his problems are happening right now in the moment. And we know for a fact that he's going to use his glitching abilities that allow him to time travel to perhaps prevent or somehow evade the events of what would be that explosion that happened with temporal loom that he himself had already witnessed, but not everyone else would if he's able to somehow change some aspect of that timeline. So, and that was how things ended off last week. He finally managed to go travel back in time right before the temporal loom had exploded. So we'll see what's going to happen. We'll see kind of what will be Loki's ultimatum as of this point. What will he do? Is he going to just stop here and, try to take some action that would prevent the temporal loom from going, from exploding? Or are we going to go further back in time? I think the one thing I was even saying is that the only way that the temporal loom can be controlled is if they actually go long before that, where he would have to prevent the death of He Who Remains, because it's because of He Who Remains' death that these events have transpired, right? I mean, the timeline has completely gone out of control ever since his death. So we'll see how it all goes. Is he going to go so deep in time that it's going to go even further back where we were once in season 1, or he's going to try and find the balance between what has happened since he remains dead and before the temporal loom explosion. We'll see that here, like how, you know, where he's gonna try and resolve all of that. Of course, like there's gonna be discussions about whether or not this would imply season 3, if there's gonna be a season 3, because again, it's already hard enough just to get a season 2, but to get a season 3, like, are they gonna go all out on that, as well as how this is going to impact the overall universe? I mean, I'm very curious to see if there's even any connection between Loki season 2 and the Marvel I feel like I highly doubt, but both movies have kind of tackled a little bit on the time-space continuum and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think I've basically touched upon everything. I mean, again, I can't believe we're already getting down to the end already. Like, I mean, these 6 weeks have gone by very quickly, and I think that at least with this show, a lot of people have been far more satisfied with the quality than we've had in the past. So, but yeah, let's see if they can at least hit that touchdown, because I feel like that's a big of a problem that we've usually had with Marvel TV, Disney Plus shows. So I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed and hope that's gonna end on a good note. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right down into the season 2 finale of Loki. Okay, we're going reverse on the look. Okay. Very, very creative.
Time to be brave. Back.
Level. It's even worse than when I was out there.
He'll make it.
No, he won't make it.
Be brave.
We already knew this, okay?
Obi,
Is he dead?
what could we have done differently?
Good question. We took too long.
Oh, we're going deep in time, huh?
Again.
Listen, get in, get suited up.
Oh,
When those
damn.
doors open, get down the gangway. Ready?
This time.
Oh man, that must suck.
No time to argue. Come on, come on.
Yeah, it's gonna be the same result.
What happened?
He's gone.
Again. Not faster.
He's gotta go deeper in the past.
After what's happened in my
Ah, there you go.
minutes, I know right now you're hurt. Throughput multiplier faster.
Everyone's like, what?
Again.
Dang. This is like Dormammu that Doctor Strange went through.
This is Ouroboros.
Oh, we're deep in
The
past
TVA
now.
handbook.
Okay.
You both wrote it.
Nice to meet you.
Look, here is a model of the loom. Give that
Jacob.
back to the professor. Thank you so much.
That's just
Trust me.
But it's going to take some time to adapt my
How
throughput
long?
multiplier. What much do you know?
Let's assume I don't know much, but I'm a fast learner and I'm a god.
Well, let's start at the beginning
It's just-
then.
Start at the
We don't
beginning.
have time for this. Decades.
Centuries.
Oh shit. That's like oh. Stop it.
It's gonna make total sense.
Look, I'm not questioning your surprisingly
We're
advanced.
going to route it directly with the primary compartment.
Won't it overheat?
No, it's not going to overheat because we're going to allow it to interface directly with Timely's adaptive exponential computing system. With all those upgrades, it will allow the loom to scale the capacity to manage the backlog of branches. The rings. Rings are too small. We're going to make them bigger. Let's go.
Better Wow.
watch out, OB. Looks like. Right. Shit. What are you going to do? Trust me.
Worth the shit. Okay.
I know what I'm doing.
No! What?
Oh shit. He did it. He beat the time.
Get to the end of the gangway as fast as you can and load the.
Has he
You're
gone
being
this
so
far?
brave. Hit the button. It can be a little sticky. Yes, come back.
It's gonna turn spaghetti, isn't it? We're being way too hopeful. I feel like something's gonna go wrong. Something's gonna go wrong. Something's gotta go wrong.
We're gonna make it.
I guess?
I'm gonna go check
Okay.
Finally.
Why do I have a feeling something's gonna go wrong, though?
It's integrating. The loom is weaving the branches together.
Okay.
It worked.
Did it?
What?
These readings are off.
I knew something
mean
was gonna
off?
go wrong.
I don't know. They're just off.
How can the readings be off? How
The loom is overloading again.
can the loom be overloading? No. That's an impossible. I don't understand.
So no matter how big you make it, it's gonna be difficult to contain it.
It's a scaling problem.
Mm.
And that's what we were adjusting for.
My loom will never be able to accommodate for it, like trying to divide by 0.
Shit.
It can't be done.
So no matter how much we increase the throughput, it will never be enough.
Enough, never enough.
The loom.
As soon as the timeline started branching, this was doomed to happen.
Wow. Yep, you're gonna go all the way back. I was calling this. You gotta go all the way back.
Stop.
I knew it. He was gonna go all the way back. I knew it. I knew it.
Strange. I've seen it. I know it.
Get out of my way.
I won't.
You've been seduced by a throne.
The last.
If you want to stop me, you'll have to kill me.
Easy.
Yeah.
Nope.
If you want me to stop, you'll have to kill me.
Why do I have a feeling that this now is gonna be having to kill Sylvie?
If you want to stop me, you'll have to kill me.
I think that's a foreshadow.
Never try to stop her. Fight back. Do something.
You could have done that this whole freaking time.
So,
You kidding me?
how many times have you been at this?
What did you do?
Oh,
come
he
on, you're
knew.
telling me you haven't learned how to pause my line a little bit. So why don't we just? So, this isn't the first time. Oh, kiddo, did you really think I was just gonna sit back and let her kill me? And
It seemed too easy.
Nah.
That seemed too easy.
HWR.
Not gonna lie.
No, I told you.
Oh,
And
so
what
he
makes you
has
think?
learned how to pause time.
This is the first time we've had this conversation.
Hold on. You're my favorite. You know that. When there's the two of you here, you were my favorite. Okay. So,
Of course you know about him.
wait, don't tell me. You're having some problems with the temporal loom.
Scaling problem.
Scaling problem. That's what he told you? Victor told you the scaling problem. Wow. No, there's no to be there. Everything.
So it's like a reset
except
button. The main one.
The sacred timeline.
So it's like a
TVA,
reset
well,
button.
That's just collateral damage. No biggie. easy to rebuild. My variants are already out there.
We'll find them.
There's too many.
I won't stop.
Doesn't matter.
Never stopped me before.
Killer. And we protect what we can.
Shit.
I want to be. I was born to be. No, but king of what?
Oh, we're going all the way back. Oh, we're going all the way back.
Find a variant who's going to be responsible for 5,000 deaths. 5,000 deaths that were not in the proper flow of time. They get there and there's a little hiccup. The variant is an 8-year-old boy. He's just minding his own business.
To who pruned the boy when you couldn't.
Well, things worked out fine for her. She actually became a judge. You know, she's the reason you're here instead of dust in a TVA vent. That's that. And by hard, I mean impossible. No, there's no comfort. You just choose your purpose.
Out of options, Sylvie. I've tried everything. The only way that anything
As
survives.
if I never kill he who remains in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So you...
Oh, he's gonna take over Timely's spot. Okay, I think that's what's gonna happen. I'm assuming that's what's gonna happen. You're taking over Timely's spot.
I know what I want. I know what kind of god I need to be. For you. For all of us. No!
Did he just change his suit? Oh, it's the horns. Guess he finally got that golden throne. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. Very symbolic.
those reports on the variants of He Who Remains.
Do any of them know that we exist yet?
Oh, I guess one of them caused a little bit of a ruckus on 616 adjacent realm, but they handled it, so we're all good for now.
We can ask her.
So
You headed up?
Yeah, I'll meet you up there.
I'm assuming they were talking about quantum media.
You're leaving.
I've got to go see what exactly it is we've been protecting for all this time.
Well, if you ever want a seat in
New manuals.
Block. Never look, never know.
It's weird that Loki's not here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Let time pass.
he's now the god of timelines. Wow. Okay. All right. So, lots to kind of digest here. So, let me just start off by saying that that was very unexpected as the ending, because I don't think it was ever been implied that, you know, season 2 was going to be in any intended purposes as being like kind of it, right? Because the way that this season 2 finale played out, it also played out as if it was the series finale. Like, I mean, like, because the whole point of what we saw in this ending was that it basically was going back to the beginning, which I had expected was going to be. There was even at one point I was just thinking, well, if they're going to try and, you know, the only other way to kind of control what's going on with the timeline and the temporal loom would mean having to stop the day that Sylvie killed He Who Remains. That was going to be the only way. And so we got that, you know, that those events ended up happening as I suspected, because that's the only way to basically contain the temporal loom for expanding too far along to a point where it's impossible to control. So that was established. We do see the consequences of it, because we knew for a fact that, you know, this was the only way to stop the temporal loom from expanding, but the consequences would require having to kill off Sylvie. That's one thing. And the second, and even if he weren't to kill off Sylvie, right, it still leads to the issue that, you know, people won't have their free will. Even if he just lets the temporal loom just explode and whatnot and just reset to what, you know, He Remains had said. Like, the whole idea is that it's a fail safe, right? The whole idea is that it's supposed to protect the sacred timeline no matter what. So it would have basically reset the timeline just to keep the sacred timeline itself to be intact. So the fact that, you know, because we knew all these elements, right? I think the question matter is, how will Loki decide to kind of counteract all those obstacles? And this is where, I mean, just to see that ending where instead of Victor Timely going into the temporal loom and taking matter to his hands, it was Loki himself who went out and confronted the temporal loom, used his powers to allow it to explode, with the timelines dying, like the branches dying, and then that he's the one who empowers those branches to continue on. So which is really like insane, because he even mentions right before, performing doing that task, that he's like, I'm a god, right? I'm going to be a god of something. So in a sense, he is doing what is also his intended purpose. I mean, it makes a lot more sense why this episode is called Glorious Purpose, because this is basically his glorious purpose. I mean, now he gets to be the god of something, one where he can control over something, and in this case, kind of being like god of like trying to keep a timeline to function, especially ones that are branches. So that was very unexpected, just to see that he himself sacrifices his his being, so that way he can allow the branches to survive, allow his friends to survive. It's a very, very difficult sacrifice to make, and yet he makes that sacrifice. It's a very difficult choice. And I mean, this meant having to sacrifice his own free will, if it meant allowing his friends, everyone around him, to have their own free will, right? And so it's really fascinating, because the more that you dig deep into this, and especially in that whole conversation between him and He Remains, and how, somehow He Remains himself had anticipated that this was going to, the events that came after his death were going to eventually lead Loki to come, travel back in time and see, realize the realities of what would happen if if He Who Remains died, and the branches themselves, were able to expand and go out of control. So, very fascinating things just to kind of hear the perspective of it all. I think the viewpoint was a really big thing about what this episode was basically kind of diving into. We get to hear these philosophy of whether or not you're going to make the ultimate sacrifice if it meant having to save the people around, or do you want to sacrifice, just trying to keep, the traditions, trying to conform to what is going on, and, trying to play that off, trying to, I guess the better way to say is that if you're going to try and break the tradition of something, which in this case would be sacred timeline, and if you want to have the free power, the free will to do whatever you want, it's like they can't be interchangeable. You have to have one or the other. So, and this is definitely a difficult dilemma that Loki himself had to go through, and eventually he found out the only way to, so of course he hears, He Remains perspective, and he hears, Sylvie's perspective, like, hey, free will is still a thing that, people should have the right to, and not just having to conform to traditions, and, especially ones that people just are not able to conform to. And so, yeah, this is where we finally get kind of both sides, allowing both things to happen, which meant, again, allowing Loki to sacrifice himself to be the one who can allow all of that to function, allow, the timelines to remain intact, allowing his friends to be alive, allowing people to have the free will. But in doing so, it meant having to sacrifice his own free will. So fascinating things to kind of think about in terms of, the philosophy of it all, the viewpoint, and the morality of it, and the ethics, because there's just a lot of things that play out here and like trying to determine that. And that's a kind of the big thing I saw throughout this whole episode. It's just like, it's a matter of how do you want to assess the moral compass of it all? What would be the best choice? And what would this require having to be the consequences of it? And so we saw the consequences of it, this being with Loki. And again, I feel as so that this felt like there was nothing that was open, right? I think everything that we see by the time we get to the final minutes of this episode, it definitely acts as if it was a serious finale, that this is the end of Loki's arc right here. Because let's be honest, I mean, this Loki is not the same Loki that we met all the way back in Thor, right? I mean, technically that is still the same Loki, but the Loki that we're dealing with here is separate from the Loki that we last see in Avengers, because that's when they start to, branch out. This is where his stories start to kind of deviate from the sacred timeline. And so, of course, like, they are different Lokis. They've gone through different, lifestyles, events, incidences, all that sort of stuff. So, the fact of the matter is that with this one, right, like, we already know what happens with Loki in the sacred timeline. Like, no matter what, he's going to die by the time he gets to Infinity War. Here, it's like, it's almost kind of in a similar sense where his arc also has a definitive ending, which means that he will have to remain inside the temporal loom, or his creation of the temporal loom, almost kind of a rebirth of allowing all the branches to stay intact. And that it's really funny because it kind of has a lot of, I think when you look into this, it definitely has a lot of symbolism when you look into kind of like the biblical references to it, because the tree itself, like, the whole idea of a tree is as a symbol of almost like rebirth, right? You see, like, a whole, like, even a tree is like kind of a sign, like a cycle of life. And so you have life and death. And here it's like, even in the case of the tree, that there's always some sort of life, there's always some sort of hope. And it was very fascinating just to see that, that image right there. Like, I mean, I gotta say, like, that was just really kind of like eye-catching. It was just like a definitely like wow to a moment, because it was just like, oh, okay, this is like implying this is a rebirth. This is an emphasis of rebirth. And that's through Loki. So Loki himself, who is, again, a god, someone who is, who has experienced what's been going on. He's seen so many scenarios of what can and cannot happen. And in the end of the day, he kind of was the one who made the sacrifice, which is really, again, weird, because we're kind of going to kind of this religious, like, some symbolism of all of everyone's roles in here, which is really weird. I mean, that's not to say that, that I'm trying to make that comparison, or I'm trying to, like, imply that, I'm trying to be hard about it. I mean, it's not. But it's very clear that there is a lot of religious, references to a lot of what transpires in this episode. Like, things like, I'm trying not to say that he's kind of like the Jesus Christ in here. I'm trying not to say that. But it's giving off that feels that, because of what happened, that, for him to allow everyone to survive, to live their free life, and, allowing them to live, that this meant having him to kind of make the ultimate decision. So, again, that was something that I felt like was really symbolic about this episode. It's just the events that transpired, what was happening, how, there was just so many obstacles here and there. And at the end of the day, it was Loki who had to make that decision, that he's the one who knew that he had to take things to his own hands. So again, it just really did feel like a series finale. I don't know how there would be any way to continue off Loki with the season 3 when you have something like this. Like, I mean, even the part where they have after, like, that basically was like the epilogue, where they allowed us to know, okay, well, this is what happened after everything that happened when Loki went inside and made his own, his own entity of this temporal loom of his own accord, where he gets control that, where he's the one who is able to empower that. And so, as a result of that, it definitely gives off the vibe that, oh, this is it. This is the end of the ride for Loki's story. Unless, again, if there's anything where his story might be connected in any way to Secret Wars, of course. Like, okay, if there's anything that his side, empowering something in a way that would allow us to go deep into the idea of, like, again, time travel, space-time continuum, and all that sort of stuff. Like, that would probably be the only way I would say that this version of Loki would still be involved. But unless that happens, and unless something is at least able to happen where he can at least leave the temporal loom, which I feel like it's very unlikely, because he needs to be there to keep the branch timelines intact. And so that way, like, none of his friends would be, would basically, become spaghetti, basically, like, perishing, all that sort of stuff. I don't think that's going to be likely the case. Again, this definitely feels as if this is it for this Loki variant journey that we've been following since, 2021. Again, surprised that this would be it. Like, I mean, I would have imagined that there could have been more to his story, or there would have been something else that could have continued off his arc, because again, Loki is such a loved character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has been one who has been a very compelling sort of character who's gone through so many different journeys. One who has, been a villain for a long time to eventually become and evolve and redeem himself to become someone who's a bit more like an anti-hero than really a villain, and someone who's a bit more compelling, complex in his intentions and what he really wants to do. And we don't just see that with, of course, the Sacred Timeline version, but we also see that here with the branched version of Loki, a variant of Loki who really starts to understand that there's far more for him, that he has a much greater or glorious purpose in life, even when he's not in his sacred timeline. So again, I'm very surprised to see that this basically acted off as if it is a series finale, which if it truly is, I think that it does end off in a very beautiful note, one that is, I know, kind of tragic, but also very hopeful and very satisfactory, just because, again, with everything that happened between now and then, it's like, it's like you don't want the character to have to kind of make that hard decision, but, life is not like daisies and roses as we all would love it to be. I mean, it's not that easy, and we kind of see here that it's a bittersweet sort of ending where everyone gets to live, the branches get to stay alive and function, but Loki's the one who has to make the decision to give up his life to move forward and actually do something very purposeful, which is again to keep the branch timeline intact post He Who Remains Dead. So again, I have to say this was a beautiful way to set it up. I know it takes a bit of time in the beginning to kind of get that discussion flowing, just to understand this, this conflicting, philosophy that was going on throughout Loki's mind. What was the best way to deal with it? Kind of the reality check of, no matter what he does, that, it's going to at least lead to one thing to another. It's not going to be 100% happy ending that we would all, would love it to be. I mean, it's just not possible. And we see that happen here, where it's just not going to be an easy decision. Again, it leaves off on a very bittersweet ending. Not as to say that it's tragic. I mean, yes, there is some tragic elements to it, because we see what happens right in the middle, right there, where he goes into Temporal Loom and, goes inside and gives them all a second chance beyond this point that, has been considered kind of the end game, right? This is the end for it, when he's now given them all a second chance in a way that, defied what He Who Remains would have anticipated, right? I would wonder if He Who Remains knew about this, or this is one of those cases where he was outsmarted once and for all, that, Loki may have finally taken things to his own hands, that he's now the one in control of the timeline, which is kind of like, hey, I mean, that's great. But yeah, I think that, this is without a doubt, like, it definitely felt like a series finale. There's no denying that. The visuals here were spectacular. Again, that point where we see the tree, and that the tree that, that grows once Loki goes inside and creates his own, world, so that way that he can, power up all the branches. Again, that's a very significant, very symbolic imagery just to see right there. Like, that was definitely that really kind of caught your eyes immediately. I mean, again, it's so bittersweet. It's so tragic. It definitely hits you deep, knowing that this is basically it for everyone, and this is what, how a decision has to be. I mean, there's got to be somewhere things have to happen, but yeah, I think that, given what it is, it definitely kind of gives off that feel of being very poetic in how it's trying to tell its story. I mean, we saw here, of course, kind of the the journey that everyone had to go through from the beginning to the end, and not just what we saw in the beginning of season 2, but also reflecting upon season 1, right? So season 1 was just as essential in setting up the basis of what would eventually be this sort of ending that we got today or tonight. And again, it just shows kind of, you know, the care that the writers took to make sure that there is a beginning to the end of the story, that, you know, they knew what they had in mind for Loki, what would eventually be his intended purpose, and how he would have such an impact on not just the storytelling, but mostly in the universe of it all. I mean, I have to say, I do applaud it. Like, I gotta applaud the writers for being a very creative in that essence. Like, again, we could have predicted anything else. It could have gone a more formulaic route. It could have gone a very predictable. It could have been very predictable in how it could have ended things off, and it just didn't. And I think that the twist right there with, you know, him going to the temporal loom was definitely one that I don't think a lot of us would have expected. But I think it really works. It definitely works. It fits with Loki's personality. It fits with his journey after having gone through so many hardship and the struggles of it all. And again, having to be in the position that he is in the TVA. And the effect that, you know, everyone had on him, knowing everyone's personalities and their philosophies and their ethics of it. And it's just like, wow, like, I think that, you know, as much as the fact that we would have wanted a much different ending for him where he could be with his friends, it's not that simple. It's never going to be that simple. And again, I feel like it's a really deep kind of analysis that you have to go through to understand the extent of what happened here. So yeah, I think that there's going to be season 3. I mean, unless there's something that Marvel has in stores where they're going to break any sort of rule right here, I highly doubt it. I think at this point, I don't think a season 3 is going to happen unless, like, again, something really big happens or they introduce a different Loki variant into the picture, which would be the only other case I can see, you know, anything happening. Could this be the end of seeing the TVA? I mean, I want to say maybe no, but again, I don't know what's going to happen moving forward, because again, this was it. I mean, much of the TVA stuff was very, as of this point, has been really exclusive to Loki, and not just about any Loki, but a Loki variant. So this could be it with, you know, seeing any more of a TVA. I mean, we can maybe hear some references here and there. Who knows? One of the things we do get kind of a nod to is the Quantum Mania situation. Like, I mean, they were talking about Earth 616. That's the timeline, I believe, where everyone is. And the ones that at the timeline that we've been following, which I'm pretty sure that has to deal with Quantum Mania. They even said that, you know, the He Who Remains variant that they had to deal with on Earth 616 has been handled. So I'm pretty sure that's referring to Quantum Mania. So that's maybe the best connection I've seen so far with anything that's happened so far, you know, post Endgame, like just that actual connection right there. But nothing else really that would imply anything that would have such an impact on, you know, the future of the MCU and the multiverse saga. Again, I don't know if this is gonna have any significance to, you know, Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars. I mean, I would imagine, again, with the whole He Who Remains situation and the fact that there are some Kang variants out there, that will be something that will be, you know, that will continue to play off without a doubt. It's just a matter of what's going to happen moving forward. And again, it's not just this show that's going to be able to answer that. Again, like, I don't know if we're going to even get a season 3 as of this point, because I think since I think aside from this show and Quantum Mania, we haven't really seen Kang anywhere. So unless, like, there's something that would happen, you know, spontaneously, I don't think that as of right now there's anything that would imply that we're going to get a season 3. But yeah, I think overall I've enjoyed this season. I think that this show has definitely taken some really emotional routes in exploring Loki variant's, you know, journey. A different one from his sacred timeline, of course. I think, again, even with what we saw in the sacred timeline, that Loki did something that was very, you know, sacrificial, very redeemable, one that really changed his character in a big way, showing that he is the hero. And we kind of see a bit of that parallel here in, you know, in the TVA, where he really enacts a act that is just as equally redeemable, equally heroic and sacrificial in the way that we saw here, and as we saw in the Sacred Timeline. So it just shows the consistency of who Loki is as a character, that, you know, no matter what, no matter the fact that he's always been, or at least early on, he's been deemed as a villain, that there is something very heroic about him, even if they may not always be the most, you know, honorable or the most ethical way. But again, I props to the writers for being very on top of Loki, really understanding who the character is and how, you know, even though he's a variant, that there is that, you know, Loki, there's a part of him as Loki that is always going to be the same, even regardless of the different environment that he's in. And it just worked out very well. And we got to see his story play out so well here. And again, it's not to say that, you know, all the episodes have been perfect and, you know, Loki, whether it be season 1 or season 2, I mean, there's definitely been times where, you know, things could have been picked up, or things, you know, could have been a bit more paced better. But even with that being the case, like, I think it led up to this really great ending right here that, again, is very, very bittersweet. Definitely one that is very unusual route for any Marvel movie. I mean, that's not to say that we haven't had any tragic endings before. We definitely have. I mean, we got Infinity War and Endgame as examples of that. Heck, even No Way Home is another example of one that's a really tragic ending, because no one remembers who Peter Parker is, right? So it's not, you know, it's not as uncommon to think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never had a bittersweet or tragic ending before, as has happened before. I just don't think that a lot of us would have anticipated for a story like Loki, where, again, with a character who's been so beloved, who's someone who has such a huge following, that, you know, I don't think anyone would have wanted him to have to deal with this, but yet I think it's just so fitting for his character. And it, again, a lot of this makes it worthwhile because of the storytelling. So props to the writers, props to the screenwriters and the directors and the creative team that really managed to, you know, bring this story together to show it to the audiences. I mean, I, for the most part, enjoyed it. I think that season 2 has definitely been even greater, you know, cinematic journey that we had to go through, like, each and every week, just to see what's going on. I think this one's definitely been one that is a bit grimmer, darker, a bit more tragic than what we saw in season 1. I think that this one definitely took a very, you know, dark turn in things here and there. One that's also very, you know, sad. But it just worked out. I think it works out beautifully in the end. I mean, is it the most perfect episode? I wouldn't say it's the most perfect episode. I think there's some ones I would contest to be, like, even more, you know, enjoyable, like, as a whole sit on. But I will say, for one thing, that considering the fact that this does feel as if it is a series finale, that this definitely marks as one of the better endings that we've gotten from any Disney Plus show. Because let's be honest, like, the endings for Disney Plus shows are not executed that well. And this one does. I think this one does a good job of really kind of tying everything back together, making its message pretty clear, and, you know, doing so from the beginning to the end. So I have to say, if this was truly the end of Loki's story, if there is going to be nothing beyond this, I think great job on the storytelling. I don't think any of us would have anticipated this was going to be the series finale, but I think this is it. This is the series finale. Without a doubt, this is the end of the Loki show right here. And I'm just glad I've been able to, you know, join in and watch it. And I cannot wait to see what else could happen in the future. If we can manage to get the consistency of a show like Loki, that's just asking a lot. Who knows? Maybe that overhaul that's been going on with Daredevil, Born Again might be it. But unless we get something like that happening, that can be as equally of a great top-notch quality show in the way that we saw with Loki, I think right now Loki has definitely set a bar. Aside from WandaVision, of course, I think WandaVision is definitely up there as one of the best shows. I think as of right now, I think if I were to say what has been kind of been some of my top shows so far from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think it would be WandaVision, then Loki, and then maybe Miss Marvel. I mean, I would have to kind of assess a little bit on that, but I think top of my head, I think that's how I would rank it right now. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Loki season 2 finale right there. I think that, I mean, or AKA Loki series finale, because that's basically how it kind of feels right now. But let me know your thoughts having now seen this episode. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are definitely questioning a lot of things of what have happened, and has a lot of questions about the future, or if there's even a future beyond this. So what do you think about that? Do you think that was this the series finale that a lot of us did not anticipate it to be? Was this it? Was this the ending for Loki? Or do you think that there is a chance of a season 3? If there were to be season 3, how will they be able to do that? Like, do you have any predictions or theories about this? What do you think about the ending that we did get for Loki? Do you think that this was very fitting for his character? Do you think that this is equally as, redeemable in the way that we saw with the Sacred Loki? I think for me, I think so, but do you contest that, sort of notion? What do you think about just the development of it all? Like, did you enjoy season 2 more than season 1, or the other way around? Like, for me, I personally think that season 2 has a far more consistent storytelling that really kind of established what was kind of building up to this finale. But do you think that maybe you just didn't feel the vibes of it? Like, were you a bit more disappointed with the ending, that maybe you were just expecting something else? Or do you think the show took a really unusual turn of events that it really defied the expectation? I think that what we do end up getting is something that I think that is very very original, very unexpected, and a very big twist, but one that I don't think a lot of us would expect. And I think that is what makes this ending really impactful in the way it is. But maybe you disagree with me. Like, is there any part of that ending that you're just kind of like, yeah, no, I just absolutely hate it? If so, like, let me know. Like, tell me what you feel about it. What do you think about the fact that, we see these endings for everyone? Like, do you think that there's anything beyond the TVA that, would allow us to continue off the TVA storyline, or just that whole universe? Or is this it? Like, will this be the end of the TVA, or at least an end of, like, seeing any part of the TVA that we've seen so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its content? What are your theories? Like, do you think there's anything that would imply that this can continue somehow, or how this would affect the overall scope of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether it be leading up to things like Kong Dynasty and Secret Wars? And let me know if you have any other thoughts having now watched this series finale. Like, what do you think about it? What do you think about the performances? I think Tom Hiddleston has really just knocked it out of the park, and I think he has definitely just given us one of the most emotional stories. But what do you think about it? Like, what do you think about his performance here? Do you have any other comments, suggestions, theories about what has happened so far ever since we got to this moment in time? Let me know your thoughts below, and make sure to like and subscribe.